Hi there, this is Tony Gaddis, author of Starting Out with Java. In this video, we're going to talk about programming problem 3, the charge account validation problem, at the end of Chapter 8. Now, you'll notice that in the problem you're given a set of numbers, and these numbers are valid charge account numbers. And the problem tells you to create a class with a method that accepts a charge account number as an argument. And that method should determine whether the number that was passed as an argument is valid by comparing it to this list of valid charge account numbers. So the approach that we're going to take in this problem is to simply create a Boolean method. You pass a charge account number as an argument to the method, and it will return either true or false, indicating whether that number is valid. Now, the problem tells us that this set of valid charge account numbers should be stored in an array or an array list. That's inside the class that does the validation. And it tells us to use a sequential search to locate the number that's passed as an argument. And then it goes on to tell us that if the number is in the array, the method should return true. If the number is not in the array, the method should return false. And then we're simply to write a program that tests the class. Before we write any code, let's briefly sketch the class using UML. We'll call the class validator. It'll be the validator class. And this is actually a very simple class. We're going to have one field, a private field named valid, and this field is an array of integers, and we will store the set of valid charge account numbers that are given to us in the problem in this field. And the class will have one method, and the name of that method is valid. And this method is going to have a parameter. We'll call it number, and that will be an int parameter, and the method itself will return a Boolean value. So that's just a brief sketch in UML of the class. Now let's look at some code. Well, here's the code for the validator class. First, we have the declaration of the valid array. Now, valid is an array of integers, and it's a private field in the class. And you'll notice that we've simply initialized the array with the list of valid charge account numbers. Now, this satisfies the requirements of the problem the way that it's written in the book. The problem simply gives us this list of charge account numbers and tells us those are the valid charge account numbers. So a simple solution is simply to initialize this array with those numbers. Now, there is a more flexible solution. If these numbers were ever to change, rather than changing the source code, changing the numbers in the source code, we could have written this class with a constructor that actually opens a file and reads the valid charge account numbers from the file into the array. Now, that would be more than what is called for in the problem, but that would actually be a more flexible solution. In case you want to write your code that way, that would be a fantastic way to write this program. But in this video, we've simply taken the simpler route, which is to initialize the array with these values. Okay, now the class has one method. The method is named isValid. It's a Boolean method, and it has an integer parameter, so we pass an integer number as an argument to the method, and it returns either true or false, indicating whether that number was found in the valid array. So let's look at the code for the method. First, we have a Boolean variable named found, and it's initialized with the value false. Now, this variable will be used as a flag to indicate whether number, the parameter, to indicate whether it is found in the valid array. We start the variable with the value false because we have not yet found that number in the array. As we step through the array elements searching for the number, once we find the number, then we will change this value to true. We have an integer variable named index, which we will use as a subscript into the array. Next we have a while loop. Now this while loop performs the sequential search. It simply starts at subscript 0, element 0, and it steps through each of the array elements searching for number. Let's look at the expression that we have here in the loop. It says while not found and index is less than valid.length. So that means while we have not found the number and index is less than the length of the array, then we want to perform an iteration. Now inside the loop we have an if statement, an if-else statement that compares an array element. It compares valid subindex to number, and if those values are the same, in other words, if we have found number in the array, then we set found to true, and that indicates that we have found the number. Otherwise, we increment index, and then the loop starts over. And when the loop starts over again, if we have found the number, then the loop stops. And also, if index has reached the end of the array, then the loop stops. Now, when we get outside the loop, the found variable will obviously be set to either true or false. If it still has the value false in it, it means that we've stepped all the way through the array and we didn't find the number. But if we did find the number, then this variable will be set to true. So we return that value to indicate whether number was found in the array. Now this is the program that I'm going to use to demonstrate the validator class. And the way that this program is going to work is that it simply asks the user to enter a charge account number, and then it uses the validator class to determine whether that's a valid charge account number. I'm going to use the J_option_pane class to get the input. So I've got the import statement for that. The name of the class is chargeIt, and then this is the beginning of the static main method. Inside the static main method, I have a string variable named input. I'm simply going to use that to hold the user's input, and then we'll need to convert the user's input from a string to an integer, and that's what this variable, account number, that's what it's going to be used for, is to hold the account number. So first, here in this statement, we create an instance of the validator class. So val is a validator variable. We can use this to reference a validator object, and then the expression new validator, that simply creates an instance of the validator class in memory. Next, we get a charge account number from the user. Here in this statement, we display an input dialog that prompts the user to enter your charge account number. So whatever value the user enters, that's returned from this method, and it is referenced here by the input variable. Well, that's a string, so we need to convert that to an integer. So here we call integer.parseInt to convert that to an integer and then assign it to the account number variable. And then here we have an if-else statement where we call val.isValid, and we pass account number as an argument. Now if account number is a valid charge account number, then this will return true, and we get this message that says that's a valid account number. But if that is not a valid account number, then the method returns false, and we get this message that says that's an invalid account number. Okay, and then the last thing in the method is to call system.exit because we need that since we're using the J_option_pane class, we need that to shut the program down. Okay, well, let's compile the program, and now let's run it. And here's the input dialog telling us to enter the charge account number. Now let's enter a number that we know is in the valid array, a number that we know is a valid charge account number. Now I cheated a few minutes ago. I actually copied this one of those numbers in the array. I copied it to the clipboard, so I'll just paste it here into the dialog box, and it tells us that that's a valid account number, and that's what we expected. Okay, well, let's run the program again, and this time let's enter a number that we know is not a valid charge account number. I know that that one is not in the array, and it tells us that that's an invalid account number.